Hey, this is Brian, and in this video, I'm going to go over what mental fitness is, why you need it, and how you could start practicing it. Mental health has historically been viewed through a reactive medical lens, focused on diagnosing and treating illness to restore a person to a baseline of normal, while modern practice sees it as a spectrum ranging from languishing to flourishing. Mental fitness is the proactive discipline of optimizing your psychological and your physiological infrastructure rather than just focusing on rehabilitating pathology or merely preventing crisis. This training model builds the resilience and cognitive agility necessary to expand human capacity and achieve peak performance. If you're not practicing mental fitness, then you're likely a passenger to life's experiences and the external stressors that happen. Whereas if you're practicing mental fitness, you're the pilot. You're the conscious director of your own path rather than letting the turbulence of the outside world dictate your direction. Without mental fitness, we often get trapped in an open stress cycle. This occurs when the body remains stuck in survival mode because it never receives a clear physiological signal that the threat has passed. Instead of metabolizing them, the body holds on to residual cortisol and adrenaline, leading to an increased allostatic load, which is the cumulative wear and tear on your internal infrastructure from your heart to your immune system and your cognitive function, caused by chronic unmanaged stress. Mental fitness involves the practice of closing these cycles daily to preserve your long-term health. This leads us to another concept, your window of tolerance. This is the psychological zone where you can effectively manage and process your emotions. When pushed outside this window on either side, you either enter hyper-arousal, marked by anxiety, panic, or anger, or hypo-arousal, where you freeze, become numb, or feel shut down. In these states, the prefrontal cortex, the logical part of the brain, loses its grip, allowing more primitive regions like the amygdala during fight or flight, the brainstem during a freeze response, to take control. By practicing mental fitness, you can increase your window of tolerance. You become more aware of when you are leaning towards either hyper or hypo-arousal, and you could bring yourself back to a more balanced state instead of being controlled by your biological impulses or bad habits that won't help you out in the long run. We eventually reach a high level of mental fitness by developing automaticity. This is the point where a healthy response becomes a natural reflex, occurring without conscious effort or the depletion of willpower. We achieve this through neuroplasticity, using the repetition to forge new neural pathways that eventually outcompete older reactive patterns. This shift moves our response from the high energy cost prefrontal cortex, where we have to think about being calm, to the lower energy cost basal ganglia, the brain's autopilot system. But before we could build those long-term habits, we needed to know how to handle stress in the moment. When intense emotions or stressors arise, it's helpful to apply the 90-second rule. From the moment a trigger occurs, the chemical process of an emotion, the flush of hormones like cortisol or adrenaline, takes approximately 90 seconds to surge and dissipate from the bloodstream. If an emotion persists beyond this window, it's no longer a physiological event, it's being perpetuated by our thoughts. By staying mindful of this 90-second window, we can choose to observe the chemical wave without feeding it with a narrative that keeps the cycle alive, that keeps us in an open stress state. To build a greater level of mental fitness, you must take that time to pause and notice what's happening within your body and your mind. Are you starting to sweat? Is your heart rate increasing? Are you clenching your fist? Or are you catastrophizing? Once you pause, you can use grounding techniques to help you stay centered and close off that open stress cycle. Not every grounding technique is the right fit for everyone. Some might heighten your senses and make you more anxious, so you must find something that works best for you. Here are 3 categories of grounding techniques you can try: physical, sensory, and cognitive. So first, physical techniques. An example would be a physiological sigh, which is a double inhale and a long exhale used to signal to the heart and the brain that everything's okay, such as You can also correct your posture, lower your shoulders, relax the body, straighten your spine. A straight spine helps you to remain confident and grounded. You could also use a temperature shock to down-regulate your nervous system, like splashing ice cold water on your face or taking a cold shower. You could self-soothe by giving yourself a hug and slowly rubbing your arms up and down, which can mimic a real hug and lower cortisol. You can do a quick exercise like 20 jumping jacks that give unspent adrenaline a physical outlet and effectively close the stress cycle. Second would be sensory techniques. They involve engaging your 5 senses, such as the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, where you can notice 5 things you could see, Acknowledge 4 things you could feel, 3 sounds you could hear, 2 things you could smell, and 1 thing you could taste. Anything that helps your body orient itself in space creates a sense of safety. Weighted blankets provide deep pressure stimulation, which defines your physical boundaries and tells your nervous system it is protected. Similarly, earthing, making direct physical contact with the ground, can help synchronize your body's biological rhythms with the environment. Both techniques can help anchor you, moving you out of a state of hyper-arousal and back into your window of tolerance. And third, we have cognitive techniques. You could attempt difficult math in your head, try to recall all the cities in your state, look at objects in the room and spell them backwards, or look around the room for an object in every color. These cognitive tasks force the brain to do a search and categorize task, which effectively reactivates the prefrontal cortex, shifting neural activity away from the emotional centers of the brain. By engaging your logical mind, you could break the emotional loop and regain control over your internal state. Moving away from the physiological tools, mental fitness also requires a shift in your mindset. A common misconception is that all stress is detrimental. In reality, positive stress acts as a catalyst for focus, motivation, and growth. Through a process called cognitive reappraisal, you can actively relabel your physiological arousal, your state. By framing a racing heart as excitement or readiness rather than anxiety or fear, you could shift your brain from a defensive threat state to an offensive challenge state. This simple shift in labeling allows you to harness that energy for performance instead of being paralyzed by it. Sometimes our mental software glitches. We experience cognitive distortions such as catastrophizing, which is the tendency to jump to the worst possible conclusion. This can distort reality and fuels unnecessary emotional distress. By developing cognitive agility, you can catch these thoughts in real time and pivot. Instead of accepting the catastrophe as a fact, you challenge it. Is this a thought or a fact? What is the most likely outcome here rather than the worst? This shifts you from a reactive, distorted reality back to an accurate, grounded belief system. A cornerstone of mental fitness is developing an internal locus of control. While an external locus can lead to a victim mindset, the belief that life is simply happening to you, an internal locus recognizes that while you cannot control external events, you possess total agency over your internal response and how you respond. This isn't about being a control freak, it's about realizing that your choices, habits, and perspectives are the primary architects of your experience. An external locus is like the adult elephant that was tied to a small post as a baby. And because it couldn't break free back then, it stopped trying. And now as a multi-ton adult, it remains held captive by a simple piece of rope. Not because the rope is strong, but because its internal map says it is. Don't let learned helplessness trick you into thinking you are bound by your history or external occurrences. Mental fitness is the process of testing the rope, realizing your current capacity, and finally pulling the post out of the ground. But breaking free of that rope requires a strategy. Here is how we turn these concepts into permanent neural pathways. 3 strategies that we could use are overlearning, environment design, and habit stacking. So overlearning, this is the practice of training a skill so thoroughly that it remains fully accessible even if you get into a state of exhaustion or high stress. We have environment design, which is where you reshape your physical and digital surroundings to remove stressors and make healthy reactions the path of least resistance. If healthy decisions become the easiest option, you have more time to develop that habit. You're more likely to do that habit. And third, we have habit stacking, which is the process of attaching a mental fitness rep to a physical action you already perform daily, effectively programming your basal ganglia to take over the heavy lifting. You can choose a recurring physical or environmental anchor like making coffee, walking through a door frame, or sitting at a red light to trigger a physiological rep such as a physiological sigh, a quick body scan for tension, or the 3-3-3 sensory grounding technique. You could also stack a reflective mental rep to a nightly habit like brushing your teeth, using those minutes to identify one moment from your day where you chose a values-based action over an impulsive biological one. For instance, acknowledging how you stayed in your window of tolerance during a tough conversation with your boss, or how you chose honesty in a meeting even when your biological impulse was to avoid conflict. By consistently pairing these reps with your existing routine, you are using neuroplasticity to eventually turn conscious effort into a natural automatic reflex. To successfully implement these changes, you must also develop your boundaries to protect your time and energy. your self-efficacy, the belief in your own capacity to change, and radical acceptance, accepting reality as it is instead of wasting mental energy on how things should be. Mental fitness isn't a destination you reach, it's the daily practice of closing the stress cycle, widening your window of tolerance, and choosing who you want to be. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment if this video was helpful, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.